Hello people, I have another video for you today. Now, today we're going to look at something I haven't looked at before. Also, the keen eye amongst you might have noticed that the scenery has changed. It hasn't, just changed the position of the camera. Now, first of all, the quality in this video might be a bit different than what you're used to. That's because my camera, the one that I film with, is over here for reasons which will become apparent. Now, let's get right to it. What I want to talk about today is a very small cheap DSLR buying guide. Let's say you have don't have a lot of money, have like $250, $300 or euros or whatever, depending on where you're from in the world, and you want to buy a DSLR, a proper camera. Now I'm going to look at two options you have in that range. Now the premise here is going to be the following: you're going to buy a body of a DSLR with something like a kit lens, for example, like this Sigma 18-50 or the Nikon 18-55, the kit lens that all Nikon's entry-level DSLRs come with. Now, we're going to look at our two options today, and we're going to talk about 13 points. So I'm going to try to go through them. Also, the image might change during the film. I'm going to show you different stuff, and also at the end I'm going to put up a chart of all the 13 points I'm going to talk about. Okay, so you can just skip to the end if you want to see just the chart and recap your mind on that one. So let's get right to it. Now I'm super organized today. I also have a list on my phone because remembering 13 points about what I'm going to talk about here isn't so easy. Now let's meet our two candidates. We have the Nikon D3300 and something a bit older, a Nikon D300. Before I start talking about them, I'm just going to talk about point number one, which is basically the premise of our case study today. I'm going to look at trying to buy a 1-year-old Nikon D3300, which is still in warranty, compared to a 7 or 8-year-old Nikon D300. So that's point number one: age and warranty. I would recommend, if you're going to buy something like a D3300, buy one that's still in warranty. Buy one that's 1 year old. Why I say that? Well, for example, my camera, after about 20,000 shutter clicks, after about 1 year, the shutter took a piss on me and I had to go and change the shutter. Now it was in warranty, so I didn't pay anything. But if you have to change the shutter on one of these cameras, it's really not worth it. You can just buy a second camera for the amount of money that costs. Now, if you're looking at a Nikon D300, being that it's 7 or 8 years old, warranty is nothing we can talk about. So, round one, the age round and the warranty round, goes to the Nikon D3300. Point number two, we're going to look at the sensor in each of these cameras. The sensor is the business end of your camera. It's what takes your image. Now the Nikon D3300 has a 24 megapixel sensor. By the way, both these cameras are cropped sensor, so no full frame talk here. So I was saying this is a 24 megapixel sensor, and the Nikon D300, this one is a 12 megapixel sensor. So that's half the megapixels of the Nikon D3300. What's that going to mean to you every day? Well, basically, the shots you're going to get with the Nikon D3300, generally speaking, are going to be sharper. Being that it's more megapixels, more resolution, you're going to be able to crop more if you want to crop. If you're going to zoom in one-to-one, it's going to be, the image you're getting is going to be sharper. And if you want to print your photos, for example, the shots you're going to get with the D3300 are going to be much easier to print, especially if you're going to look at printing something a bit bigger, like A4 or A3 size paper. I don't know, whatever you like to do. Okay, so second round goes to, again, the D3300. So it's 2-0. Not looking so great so far now, is it? Point number three, ISO. What does that mean? Well, the 3300 has a native ISO of 100 to, I think it's 12,800 ISO. The D300 has a native ISO of 200 to 3200 ISO. So in sheer range of ISO, the D3300 is much better. Now, realistically, ISO, native ISO and extended ISO aren't so important to me. What's important to me is what's the maximum ISO I can actually use before the image starts to look like crap. Well, from my experience, and this is strictly my point of view, I'm not gonna put up shots, so you guys can pixel peep, because that's not what I do. If you want to see, charts being shot or whatever, go on a professional website. This is not one of them. Now, I was saying on the D3300, the maximum ISO that I would shoot it is 6400. That's the absolute maximum. Although I would say I would maybe recommend 3200 if you don't want too much grain in your image. Now on the D300, the maximum, absolute maximum I would recommend is 1600. So just on that point, those are 2 stops of light that you're winning if you use the D3300. So it's gonna be better in low light situations. And since I like shooting low light, shooting at night a lot, that's a big point to me. It's very important. So the ISO round goes to the Nikon D3300 again. So it's 3-0 so far. Point number 4, focus system. The autofocus in the Nikon D3300 has 11 points of autofocus, only one of which is cross type. It's one of the most basic autofocus systems you can get on a current range DSLR from any manufacturer. You can't really go any more basic than this in terms of autofocus. Now, the Nikon D300, this is something completely different. This one has a 51 point autofocus system, 11 of which are cross type points. Now, to put it into perspective, this is the type of autofocus you would get on a current range, for example, Nikon D7100. It's a better autofocus than even on a camera like a full frame Nikon D600. So this is really a almost pro level autofocus system. So in terms of autofocus, the D300, it not only wins, it destroys the Nikon D3300. Next point, number 5, focus motor. The Nikon D300 has a built-in focus motor, which means you can autofocus Nikon AF or AFD lenses. The Nikon D3300, like all Nikon entry-level DSLRs, does not have a built-in focus motor. So if you want autofocus, you have to use an AFS lens. What does that mean in real life? Well, you can get right now some really cheap deals on used AF or AFD lenses. You can take advantage of those on the D300, but you cannot take advantage of those on the Nikon D3300. So this round goes to the D300. Point number 6, FPS, shots per second. If you want to shoot sports, how many frames can you get per second? Well, the D3300 says it will get 5 frames per second. But keep in mind, the buffer on this camera is fairly small. So, after about 5 or 6 shots, it's gonna start to slow down. Now, the Nikon D300, this one can take, 6 shots a second, 6 frames per second. But if you get the external grip, the optional battery grip with the appropriate battery, you can go up to 8 frames a second. Now, 8 shots a second with the optional battery grip, that's amazing. Also, the D300 has a higher buffer, meaning you can take more shots before the camera starts to slow down. So in real life, that means that the D300 is going to be better for things like sports. Couple that with the better autofocus, it's going to be better to track subjects, fast moving subjects, whilst you're shooting sports. So this round goes to the D300. So it's 3-3 so far. Moving on to point number 7. Now, this is a very complex thing I'm doing here. I have a list, actual fucking list. I took time to do a list for you guys. Video. This one's gonna be really simple. The Nikon D300 does not do video. So this one has to shoot video as well as a Barbie doll camera and will still win. Seriously now, the Nikon D3300 shoots 1080p video, 60 FPS. Actually, surprisingly, the video quality is very good on this camera, keeping in mind it's an entry-level camera. Most of my videos are shot with this camera, so even someone that's inexperienced as me can do that. You guys can maybe get better results. Keeping that in mind, it does not have any pro video functions. For example, you can't change aperture whilst you're shooting video. The autofocus is clunky, is noisy. So if you're just shooting still video, it's gonna be great. Also with some proper lighting, you can get some good results. So this round goes to the D3300. Okay, point number 8, weight, the weight of the camera. Now, the premise is the following. I'm gonna judge that a camera that's lighter is gonna be better because it's gonna be easier to carry around. Now, the Nikon D3300 weighs 460 grams. Figure out what that means in whatever unit of measurement you're using in your country. So this one's gonna be easy to carry around in vacation. Now, the Nikon D300 is 825 grams, almost double the weight. So this is a big fat fellow, it's heavy. My girlfriend, for example, when she picked it up, she said this is too heavy for her. You know, to each his own. Okay, so the D3300 wins this round. Next one, point number 9, construction. Now I'm going to be looking at construction quality and materials. The Nikon D3300 is built by slave labor in Thailand. This is full plastic. I'm going to throw up some images right now so you can see the full plastic body. This is as cheaply made as you can. I told you, my shutter took a piss on me after about 1 year. So, you know, not very encouraging in terms of quality. And now, the Nikon D300. This is where things get serious. This baby, this is a full metal body camera. This was in the age when Nikon actually built proper cameras. You want a camera that's built as well as this, built as a tank today, you're gonna probably have to look at something like a Nikon D4S, which costs thousands of euros. This is as well built as the Nikon D700 and almost as good as the legendary Nikon D3. You can't buy today a full metal body Nikon crop sensor camera. This is a tank, that's why it's heavy. I like that it's heavy personally because all that metal feels good in my hand. It feels like an actual tool. Mine has a few scuffs on it, but that's no problem. It can take them. The D3300 feels a bit like a toy. Yeah, it's super light, but it doesn't give you a confidence that if you accidentally drop it, not that you should drop your camera, that it's gonna survive. Well, whilst with the D300, I have the confidence that if I drop it, it's still gonna be fine. I wouldn't recommend that anyway. Right, so the score so far is 5-5, equal. We're gonna look at something really important. Point number 10, button layout. And what buttons you get on the camera, the actual camera controls. Now, again, I'm gonna bring you closer in to look at them right now, but the Nikon D3300 has one dial, it has one function button. I'm gonna ignore normal buttons like flash, menu, play, because any camera has that. I'm just gonna look at buttons that help you control the camera. So I was saying, one dial, one function button, and it has one of these, typical classical dials. Also has a exposure compensation button, and to be perfectly honest, that's about it, in terms of relevant buttons. Now, the Nikon D300 has what I would call a pro button layout. First of all, you have primary and secondary command dials, 2 command dials, right? You have 2 function buttons. You have exposure compensation button. Very important, you have metering button, right? You have a autofocus type select button from single point focus, matrix, and area autofocus. You have dedicated ISO, dedicated quality, dedicated white balance, dedicated single shots, low shot, continuous low, continuous high, so on and so forth. You can see where this is going. You have a lot of buttons. Now, couple that with the screen up here, which the D3300 does not have, and if you know what you're doing, this camera allows you to change your settings very fast, very easily, very quickly. It's what I would call a pro level layout. If you look at a current Nikon D810, for example, the basic button layout is the same on this camera. Keep in mind, this camera has no auto mode. You have to know what you're doing if you're going to use it. the disadvantage of the D3300 is that if you want to change, more advanced settings, for example, like metering, white balance and metering should be advanced, but apparently they are, you have to go into the menu and then click buttons and select. Whilst on the D300, it's all there, all on buttons or easily accessible. Point number 11, memory card. Now this is an interesting one. The Nikon D3300 uses a standard SD card. The Nikon D300, however, uses the less common CF card, compact flash. Now I'm gonna give this round to the Nikon D3300 because I think that it's more common to have, lying around the house an SD card than a compact flash card. And that can influence you because, for example, if you buy the camera without the card, you're most likely gonna have one of these around the house, whilst you're maybe gonna have to buy a compact flash. So I'm gonna be nice and I'm gonna give this round to the Nikon D3300. Now, point number 12, getting close to the end. Extra features. The Nikon D3300 has gimmicky features. For example, like macro mode, landscape mode, child mode. You get a panorama. It has stupid filters like on Instagram. They're not things that actually help your photography. They're just gimmicky. They're there to just pop flashes in your eye and take away what photography should be all about, which is you working out a beautiful image. Now the D300, on the other hand, has actual important stuff that helps your photography. You can do time lapse with this camera. It has, for example, a mirror up function. So it lifts the mirror in low light situations, lifts the mirror, press the shutter button again, then takes a photo. So you don't have vibration whilst you're using lower shutter speeds in low light. What you can do, you have a depth of field preview, you have excellent flash control, all types of features that actually help your photography. Now I could go on in a very, very long list over here, but I'm not going to do that. If you want, download the camera's manual and you'll see what I'm talking about. The things you can do with this camera, for example, you can do like double exposure, which is something the entry-level DSLRs can't do. That's why, in combination with the button layout, this camera has pro-level features, and it's something that will actually help you if you want to learn more about photography. Okay, so the point for features goes to the Nikon D300 because it actually has useful features. Last one, I'm gonna call this one old lens compatibility. What I mean by old lens, I mean like old manual focus lenses like Nikon AI or AIS lenses. If you put an old manual focus lens, still f-mount of course, on the Nikon D3300, focus is going to be manual, of course, but very importantly, this camera will not be able to meter with that lens. So you're going to have full manual control. That may be fine, but for a beginner, maybe it's not the best thing. Now, the Nikon D300, on the other hand, has a non-CPU lens function. That's what they call it. If you put an AI or AIS lens on here, a manual focus lens, focus, of course, is going to be manual, but very importantly, it can meter with those older lenses as long as you do the proper settings in the camera's menu. So, my mouth hurts, I've talked a lot. To round up things, the Nikon D3300 scored 6 points, the Nikon D300 scored 7 points. Which of these points are relevant to you will vary from individual to individual. That's why right now at the end I'm going to throw up the chart I was talking about, pause the video, look at it and decide what's important to you. I own both of these and I can't say, okay, I'm going to throw this one away and use this one, and I can't say I'm going to throw this one away and use this one. They both are good for something else. They both cost about the same amount of money. Depends on what you want and what's good for you. Okay, so have a look at the chart, and that was it. See you guys. Bye.